So today's project is a simple easel card. As you see, it just pops up. I've got this on dimensional, so I have, of course, the outside decorated. I have the inside, celebrate the good stuff. It's your day, so that when it's popped up, you still see the image. And today's card I'm going to make a little bit differently than this one. We're not going to use this button. I also have my envelope decorated, so when it's all folded up, you have this really sweet card, of course, and then the decorated envelope and the decorated inside card. So let's get started on making this card. The featured stamp set for today is this Peaceful Place. This is a stamp set that I had purchased a while back ago and hadn't used, and I think it's one that's overlooked in the catalog. So I'm happy to share this with you today, and I love that you'll see how easy it is to make. Now, because I'm making a birthday card, and this does have the It's Your Day, but I wanted something for the inside of my card that was a little more birthday-ish. So I am using a sentiment from the Picture Perfect birthday stamp set as well. This is in the annual catalog. Both of these actually are found in the annual catalog. And if you need a copy of the catalog, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to get one to you. So I have gone ahead and cut all of my pieces, and this is a regular card base. So this is 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. And I'll go ahead and use my bone folder to get that all crisp edge there. And then I'll show you, we're going to make one score mark, and I'll show you how to do that. We want to score the front part of the card base in half. Okay. You could, if you would like, use your center fold and just go ahead and fold this. Now this is a darker piece of paper, so my eyes have a little more trouble with that. But let me see if I can do it this way. So you could, this is probably the easy way. And then take your bone folder and make sure you get a nice crisp crease there. Otherwise, what you could do is be this way. Take your scoring tool and you would score at 2 1/8. Okay, so we're done with the trimmer. So now that we have our scored lines, eventually this is how the card, this flap is going to fold down. So you have both of them folding in the same direction. Because what we're going to do is attach the front piece of our card here, this piece, we're going to attach that to this card base. Okay, so this is our card base and we're done. So I've brought in a piece of just scrap paper. I've got my stamp mounted up. Now for this portion, because we're going to be using some watercolor technique here, and because of that, I'm using a shimmery white paper, but you want to use either the shimmer white or watercolor paper. And because we're using watercolor, we want to make sure that our stamp is inked and stays on ink. You cannot use Memento, it will bleed through. So stays on is what you want for this project. Squirrel. So I also have a piece of scrap paper here. For the squirrel, I'm going to go ahead and ink him up in the stays on ink as well. Okay, we're done with the squirrel. I'm going to go ahead and color my squirrel first because I find that easier. And for the squirrel, I have my aqua painter here. If you don't have an aqua painter, you can just use a regular paintbrush. And I've got my crumb cake ink. And I'm going to make sure that I've got water coming out, that my brush is good and wet. And then I'm going to pick up some ink from the crumb cake, and then I'm just going to start to color in the squirrel here. This card may look difficult, but it's actually really easy. Okay, then each time you're done with a color, you want to make sure you clean off your aqua painter. So I'm just running it across this paper. So I'm done with the crumb cake ink. So I'm going to color the rock next, which the rock is in Smoky Slate. Same thing, just make sure you pick up some ink. And we're just going to color in the rock. So I'm going to let these colors dry, and we'll come back to the squirrel in a moment. And let's go ahead and move to the focal point panel of our card. So for this, I'm going to start with the trees, and I'm using Old Olive ink. And I am going to start with this bigger tree. And there's really no rhyme or reason here. It's watercolor, so it's not meant to look like it's just totally perfect or anything. Just color it in. Now with these little trees, I just do just a tiny little bit of, you're not going to be able to color them in perfectly. Again, this is watercolor, so don't let it stress you too much. You're just wanting to lay down some color there. Okay, so I think I'm done with the green. I'm going to bring in my smoky slate again. And now I'm going to color the rocks. And now I think I'll bring in the soft suede. And I'm using the soft suede for the tree trunks here. I like how that looks. We still have the water to do, but I'm going to give this a few minutes to dry, and while that's drying, we're going to go back to our squirrel here. On this first card that I made, I used watercolor for this grass, and I actually used a blender pen, which you really shouldn't do because it did smear for that little flower. But this time I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. Got a mossy meadow marker. So I'm going to try just adding just some lines where this green grass is, and it's not going to show up very brightly because I've got this darker gray, but you can see it a little bit here. Just gives it just a little bit of color here. And then I'm going to bring in my yellow marker to color my flower. So while I'm waiting on this card front panel to dry, I'm going to go ahead and cut the squirrel out. Now, I'll use the Big Shot for this. I've got my magnetic platform. You'll want your one clear plate on the bottom. Then I'll place my squirrel down where I want him. I'll place the stitched framelit in the center where I want it to cut out. I'll put my other clear plate on top, and then I'll run it through the Big Shot, and I'll be right back. So now you see we have the squirrel. I'm going to bring back in this first panel. And when I was making this card, I tried a combination of pool party. I also tried balmy blue, and those work, but I think I want this one to be a little bit of a brighter blue. So I'm going to pull some, I'm going to try blueberry bushel. And for this, I need a block. So before we had the new ink pads, these older designs where you push up and then flip, you could easily push the ink pad like this to get ink on the lid, and that's where you could pick up your color for watercolor. With the newer ink pads, it's a little bit harder to do. So you have a couple of options to show. So this is the one that looks the new design. You can try to lay your stamp pad on your surface and push down, and just push down a couple of times. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. See, this time I didn't get any ink really. So what you can do instead is just take your clear block and just ink it onto your block. So you've got plenty of ink here. And since I'm not sure about this color, I just want to pick up a little bit of it and I want to experiment. Now see, that's really, really dark. So I want to be very careful with this. I don't want it to be too dark. Okay, got that nice and clean. Before I put the cap back on, I always kind of take my fingers and just make sure that the point, that the bristles are kind of pointed in one direction. That way, if you don't do that, then they might dry separated, and that kind of does a weird thing later on. So I'm going to move this out of my way just because I don't want to accidentally get ink on anything else. So this is done. We're just going to let this dry for a moment. So for my greeting on the outside here, I've got a piece of shimmery white again. Got my early espresso ink. I'm just gonna... And then I'm going to go ahead and banner cut. There's multiple ways to banner cut. I have this old hexagon punch. If you don't have this one, there is the triple banner punch. And you could also just do it manually by hand. I'm going to start with this one. And I'm just lining up this point. I want that point in the center of my card. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And there you get your banner cut. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Just eyeballing it. That one's not quite in the center. There we go. And then I'll do the same thing on this piece that's going to be sort of matted. I'm going to go ahead and assemble these together. I'm bringing in my silicone mat. If you have never seen the silicone mat, it's great. It keeps adhesive from sticking to it. So there is our banner, and I can go ahead and put dimensionals on the back. And now for this panel, I'm going to bring this back in. Now I have this triple banner punch. This is an old one. I mean, not triple banner, I'm sorry. It's a trio punch. This is an older one, so you may not have this exact same thing, and you don't have to punch these corners if you don't want to. I just like the look that it gave it. So I'm going to go ahead and punch. And then I can go ahead and adhere. I think I'm good. I think I'm complete with that. Go ahead and adhere this together. Now we can also take our inside panel of our card and we can go ahead and stamp that too. I do like to stamp it when I remember before I adhere it to the inside. That way if I make a mistake when I'm stamping, I can go ahead and turn the paper over or fix it. So I just find this easier to do this way. So we'll just stamp our greeting. And then I have this other cute little leaf that we're going to use to stamp in the corner. Got that right there. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my envelope as well since I'm stamping. And I'm going to stamp a leaf on the envelope. Just like that. Gives it a little bit of something. And actually, if you wanted to place two, you could. So now you have a decorated envelope and the inside panel. Now we're ready to just assemble our card. So the way you do this is, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and center this panel onto a 5.5 by 4 1/4. This is the same size as your card front. So I'm going to adhere this. Okay, and now we want to bring in our card base, and remember I told you we've already scored this bottom half, and this is where we want to put adhesive, only on this bottom the bottom scored part. So I'm just going to run a bunch of adhesive because we want to make sure it sticks really good. I found it easiest to just go ahead and close up my card, and I started at the top here, and I just lined up the top from top and side to side, and then I gently laid it down and pressed. and then you can give it a good rub from the back. And there is a little bit of adhesive at the bottom here, so I can just run my finger over and it comes right off. Okay, so now you see when your recipient opens it up, that's the easel part. Now we want to make sure that it has a way to sort of stay up. So let's first adhere the inside panel. So we had already put our dimensionals on the back of this, so now you can peel the backings off and then decide, you know, where you want your card. Now in this case I've already placed this panel, so I know I want this to be like centered in there. And by having the dimensionals on the back, it lifts this up just enough so that the card stays up. If you just had it flat, then this part could just kind of slide. But by having the dimensionals up there, it keeps it in the easel form when you want it. And now I just want to place him kind of like so. Now, on this card, I put this little button with the thread because I felt like it just needed something. I had several people tell me to just leave it as is. So it'd be fun. Leave me a comment below. Which card do you like? Which one is your favorite? The one with this little button and the thread, or the plain one? And then, so we have this plain one, and I'll give you a third option and see which one is your favorite. So the third option would be, I have these old candy dots and I have some that are in old olive. So I'll try just adding a few of these to the card, and we'll just see if there's one that you guys like best. And there you go. I just took the second card and added these on there. But if you wanted to leave it plain, you know what it looks like plain. And then you have, of course, these two. If you enjoyed today's project, please remember to give it a thumbs up for the like. If you've not already subscribed to my channel, click the big red button. If you have any questions or comments, or if you need a catalog, or you want more information about Celebration, anything like that, leave it in the comments below, or check the links in the description below and reach out to me. Until next time, have an incredible day.